So I know that this chuck is clean because I didn't want to have to sit and use chemicals today and actually make a mess and clean out a chuck. I know these two are dirty. And if push comes to shove or later, or if you got a brand you want to see the inside of, they're really all the same. They just have different numbers of parts in them. So you can tell what's going to be inside by the key, by your chuck key. So generally speaking, there's two styles. It's either going to be a big Allen wrench, or it's going to be a tapered geared wrench. All right. So it's got a tapered gear, and you can see inside when I put that in. You get a little closer to the point where you can see the gear. All right, so that's your slide plate, and your chucks are riding on a device that's riding in spiral grooves that are on the other side of that plate. But we turn that plate with this key, and these Penn State chucks aren't the best, but that's how you rotate the plate. So you have this at a 45 riding against the angle inside the chuck, and that's what allows it to go around this way by sticking a chuck in this way. If you're going to use your chuck like a Supernova or almost all the Vic Marks, they use a hex key. All right, so if you can see in there, there's this little piece here and this little piece over here. And they actually are essentially this key's piece that's a separate object on the body that rotate that gear plate. So you have to have one of these. In a Vic Mark, they're built in as two pieces that do that rotating, so you can use a hex in it. And the other ones, it's actually built into the key. This is a one-way here, and this is their geared key. So this may become a little more obvious later on how these things work. Here's a set of tools that I originally bought as a kit. And you can tell by the brand that these are the best on the market because they have the word Pittsburgh on it. And I heard they make a lot of good steel out in Pittsburgh. Oh, they came from Harbor Freight. And they did not work worth a hoot. The little pieces on the end that spread out won't stay at the same length. And then when you're putting a lot of torque on them, they tend to bend. And I just had all sorts of problems. So finally, I went back to Amazon and I got this style. I don't know if I can diagonally get it on there for you or not. Boy, there's a long delay in that, isn't there? So this is a nice, good pair. Works really good. Because the next thing we have to do is that gear plate is in there with I think you would call it that's not a C ring. It's got to be a retaining ring. A what? A snap ring. Okay. And it's got a hole in each end of the ring, and you put these in, and you'll normally have to just be patient, struggle with it a little bit. On this particular chuck, the snap ring actually is not flat. And we've tried bending it. It's from the training center. We can get it back to flat, but it doesn't seem to want to stay that way. So you have to watch out for that when you take it out. but especially when we put it back in. So got that up played out. So now I'm going to go and just take the jaws off, if I have the right tool. And each jaw has 2 screws. Doesn't matter what kind of jaws you have on. I pre-loosened these so I didn't have to do all the snapping. And when you're clean, it's kind of like creating a tenon for a bowl. If you're going to take the time to take these apart and clean them, really clean them. I mean, get to every nook and cranny and get the garbage out. There's no sense just going to all this work and hitting it with a air compressor and walking away, because they're not going to last very long. If you do a lot of wet wood, they're especially filthy. Now, one of the things that I do that I've never seen recommended, I always see people putting a lot of lube back in. I don't lube mine at all when I put them together. I'm not a high volume production turner, and anytime I put lube in, the cleaning is horrible, especially if you wait too long. You've got to get all the old grease out that's got all the little sawdust chips in it, whereas if I don't lube and I just keep it clean, because it doesn't take long to do it, I never have that problem. I can pretty much just clean them with a acid brush or some kind of mild brush, and they clean up really easy. So one of the things that doesn't normally happen here, kind of took this apart backwards, that scroll plate slipped out. And one of the ways you can put these back together is they tell you to put these back exactly where you found them. Well, I don't know how you'd ever really do that. You can get close, but you'd never really get there. And then they have you put the scroll plate back in to match these. That didn't work so good. Now, I have an advantage here in that each one of these has a stamped number on the back. These are your jaw keys. All brands don't do that. So when you go to take your chuck apart, what I suggest doing, and I should have done it on this so you'd see it, is to screw these out and find out which jaw will pull out first. That plate is down. Well, I'll show you when we put it back together. Now the trick is you got to get that plate to drop out of there. And on these chucks, that diameter of that ring is very much almost perfect with the diameter in here. If you get it in crooked, you're going to play heck getting it back out again. So when you drop these things back in later, you just want to make sure you get it around the spindle stuff here and get it to drop down in there straight. But anyway, from the top, here's what a scroll chuck looks like. So the lighting doesn't show that very well. I don't know if I tip it, if it'd, still doesn't show it. Ain't moving, huh? Okay, I don't know if you can see that that's literally a scroll in there. It's a solid piece of steel that's had been routed out or formed, however they do it, and it's in a spiral. And each one of these jaw keys have these grooves in them, and they actually ride in those grooves. So as you turn this around, these jaw keys are getting either closer to or further out from the edge of that piece. That make sense? So, what do you want to clean? You want to clean all these gear teeth out really good. Even though this one shouldn't have even been used since our last cleaning, it's got sawdust in it. Not very much. And you want to clean these jaw keys really, really well. You want to make sure that this bottom part and all of these grooves are just cleaned into the corners. All of these, just every groove in here, you want to clean it totally out. Again, I say it's kind of like making a tenon. If you don't get that tenon shaped right and get all the corners come out, you won't have a good grip on it. And to make these run smooth, you need to get into all those little places. On the back side, here's a jaw that's got a lot of sawdust in the groove that goes in the top side of the slide. There's a place for that to ride on the slide, so the jaw fits in there like this, and is also being guided with your bolts to fit in a very specific place. So anyway, you take all this apart. Now, one of the places you can go is go to Craft Supply out in Provo, Utah, and go to their video section, and they have a very good video at taking a Vic mark apart and putting it back together. Now, I don't do some of the things they do. None of us turn the same. None of us use our tools the same, so you just have to develop what works for you, I guess. But he uses a carb cleaner. He just has one of those little cans that go down in with a little handle on it, and he'll throw all this stuff in the carb cleaner and he'll leave it overnight. And then he'll come back and clean it the next day. And that's probably what you're going to have to do if you really lube your chucks up good. Because I'm telling you, if they get packed, they are a bugger to get cleaned out. But carb cleaner, I looked it up this morning. It's got a bunch of nasty chemicals in. So, and like benzene, which police departments all know is horrible for officers doing particularly fingerprint work and that kind of stuff. So probably better off to do all that outdoors if you're going to do it. And personally, I don't. The most I ever use is mineral spirits, odorless, because odorless doesn't have one of the chemicals with an ene ending that's taken out of it. So that's the kind of mineral spirits I buy to do cleaning with. Because I do a lot of it in my shop, but I try not to have any open containers, and wash your hands good when you're done, and wear rubber gloves of some kind while you're working with it. So we've cleaned everything. That includes the bottom surface in here, because that's where this scroll plate is rubbing up against. Once this is put back in, it's resting on that bottom surface. So you want that to be clean. You want to clean everything in here, all the little screws, clean the threads off of them. So now if you're getting ready to put it back together, we want to drop this in straight as we can. Still didn't go straight down all the way. So the best way we found is just tapping them on a hard surface. Yep, I don't know if you heard that clink. It hit bottom. And once it's there, then we want to take our retaining ring. Now I will caution you, You might want to put your safety helmet on for this. I always cover it as best as I can with my hand, because these can come out of these pliers, and when they do, they're coming out with a lot of force. So I tend to keep it covered. Get it to go down over that shaft. Once I'm down in there, I'm okay. And then you have to make sure that you press down on everything. Where do you want me, Tom? You got to press down on that ring around and make sure that it snaps back in the groove on this casing here. And again, you'll typically hear that. I just heard it. And the rings should be about as far apart as they did when you started out. Everything's turning good. Now, if you were a Mike Mahoney or any of these high volume turners, again, you may want to put some lube in there because you're doing a lot of metal scraping. But I'm just kind of a hobbyist turner at this point, and so mine don't get all that hard of work. So to put these back in, as I mentioned, on this body, I've got numbers 1 through 4, and all of my jaws have got a 1 through 4. So I'm going to start out on the number 1, and I'm going to rotate. I really don't know how to show you this on camera because you just can't see them down in. But what there is that ring, I don't know if any of you can see it just live with the lighting, is rotating around that scroll. I want to have the start of the outside edge come to this number 1 jaw. I want to see it start. And there it is right there. And then I'm going to back it out of the way so it's not in this channel. And then I'm going to put the number 1 jaw in. And then I'm going to turn this, make sure that it's been grabbed, which it hasn't. Slide the key in. Okay, grabbed it that time. Now I'm going to go over here to number 2, and I'm going to let that scroll the start of the scroll come around, back it out, take the number 2 jaw, put it in, pinch it in with your finger, turn it. Now it's moving in. Now I go to the number 3. I'm looking for the same thing. There's the start of it. I back it back. I take the number 3, put it in, squeeze it, and then around to number 4. So my suggestion is, and I've done this on a number of chucks that I owned that did not come with numbered sets on them. When the chuck is new and you get it, go ahead and number with a little engraver or something the jaw position on the chuck and the end of the slide. That's what I would do. So why do they do that? Or why is that important? If you put your chuck together with the jaws and you got 2 that fit close together and 2 that are sitting out like this, I don't think you got the right jaws and the right sliders in the right place. And that's what can happen. You want these things to come together. It's to the same point. So one of the reasons why jaws aren't always perfect is how they make them, and different manufacturers make them different ways. Some of them make them where this is one big piece of metal. It's a round, solid piece. And then they cut it. And so that's why the perfect tenon is the shape of the jaws when they're down to about 1/8 of an inch apart, because that's the way they used to be round. And then you want to keep the kerf in there. If you don't do the kerf, then the shape isn't a circle anymore. Other people actually they're making precision enough jaws that they just make jaws. They don't make the circular one and then cut it. Every jaw is individual. They're all identical, and you can put them anywhere you want. So you'd have to just go by the instructions of the chuck you buy. So I'm mating mine up. The other thing you can do is when you take your chuck apart, you can put color marks on it and keep your jaws in an order around the chuck. All kinds of ways you can get around things. And when you're cleaning it, don't forget to clean these jaw screws, and also the countersink. You want to make sure that's cleaned out so that they go in position right. So that's really all there is to taking apart a chuck. And the few variances, oops, that's number 4, are, what kind of key does it have? Supernova 2s in the old days, I haven't seen any other chucks beyond that time. They have a back plate like the Vicmarks do. I think that's kind of marketing hype. I have always found that the most problems that I have when my chucks get hard to turn, it's always in the slides. They're the ones that get bound up and locked up and make it hard to turn your chuck in there. I haven't found that the keeping dust out of the back side of the chuck has ever been an issue. But that's a selling point for Vicmark. They put the plate on. In their case, though, this back plate has 24 holes drilled in it. Oh, you're not there. Has 24 holes drilled around. So there are lathes that will use those as the indexing marks. So you rotate your chuck to a position, let's say you're doing a table leg, you're going to put flutes on it, you're going to route flutes in the spindle, and then you can turn it X amount and then do the next flute, and then X amount and do the next flute. You might do every hole, you might do every third hole, whatever. It's just got to multiply or divide into 24 correctly. So I think we looked at this. The only difference here is there's a screw here, and it's actually pretty clever the way they did this. These screws go this way down the chuck, and when you pull out this little piece that substitutes for what's on the end of key, there's a rounded bottom cutout of it. So what they do is when you put this in, insert it, this big long screw, actually it's a bolt without a head. You can't see it anywhere, can you? Not very big around. But it rides in that recess in that thing, and that's what keeps it in there. So there's really not a matter of tightening it tight or anything. You just got to take it down till it doesn't go anymore and stop. And the plate is going to hold the screw from going anywhere. So that's pretty clever. The only other thing is, if you have one ways, now this has, no, not this one. This Vicmark has a spindle adapter on it, all right? And if you bought chucks, you probably bought a spindle adapter for your lathe, 1x8 or 1x8 by 1 by 1 1/4. If I watch the Craft Supply video, Mike takes the plate off as the first thing he does, but on the version I got, the plate won't come over the adapter. So again, these are little changes that happen all the time in the manufacturing process, and you just have to adapt as you go along. It's no harder than I've showed you, except there's these little idiosyncrasies that may be a little bit different. So, dummy me, I have the adapter in for my 1 by 1 1/4, 1 by 1 1/4, 1 1/4 by 8. I'll get it right. I couldn't get this off. We had it up in the lathe. Brenda was helping. Who else was helping? Somebody else was helping. Me try and pound them off, and I was using this as a hammer. I had this and this as levers to hold the lathe closed, and I'm beating on it trying to get that adapter off. What I forgot was, Wallace is going to love this. On the back of this adapter, there's a vertical. Now, we've seen set screws that go in the side to lock it onto the spindle, but this one just has a set screw that goes down, and it just bites in to the bottom part of that housing and keeps it from rotating, so that if you're turning in reverse, the adapter doesn't separate from the body. No. I was referring to Robin as headstock. Well, it's back to when you have multiple chucks, and I only have really 2 brands that I use. They're just different, I don't have that on the one ways. That's not the right one. And if I don't put all this stuff back, it won't be there when I get home. We got one other kind of chuck. Do you still have any of those back there, Dan? The Tommy bars? Or are they all gone? Oh. Okay. Well, if you've never seen them, most of you are probably familiar with a chuck that uses a key of some sort. But this happens to be a Nova chuck that I bought years ago, simply to use on the cold jaws. And the reason was that for different chuck keys, these really get in the way when you've got these big cold jaws on, especially if it's a set bigger than this. So I just decided to get a Tommy bar set because it was much easier to do. So in this case, you've got one set that this jaw slides are in. This is firm, and this is what rotates the scroll around. and so that the jaws move closer together, further apart. And they are, if you have a lathe that's got a spindle lock on it that's easy to use and handy, then you can kind of get by with just using one lever. But if you don't have a spindle lock on, these are kind of a pain to try and hold two levers and get your work into the jaws. So, but they're less expensive and they work every bit as well. I've seen stories where people say they really like lever jaws because they think they can make them tighter than, clamp down tighter than they can with a key jaw. But these kind of scroll chucks are far more popular. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. That's a Penn State. Yeah. My experience with the Penn States, when you turn it hard, it keeps pushing the key out. I don't know why that is, but that's irritating to me. But that's what you got. That's what you got, and you'll probably overcome it. Oh, I did forget that, didn't I? Yeah. You know what? I don't remember. Normally they're on the number 4 jaw. Most of us, once you get experienced, you take that thing out and you just don't remember it anymore. But for safety purposes, there is a roll pin that is typically on one of the chucks or on one of the jaws, slides. And in this case, it's in actually the jaw itself. All right, so you won't be able to see it. The little pin is over on the other side in here. It's right there. That's a pin. And in the jaw, or in the chuck, I got to get this down far enough. You see this? My monitor is backwards, so I'm having to do mirror image here. You see this slot? That pin goes down in that slot, and you get to the point where the number 4 jaw won't go any further. You can't get it out. And so that's a safety for people who think that they should use, they buy a set of jaws and they'll go from 1 5/8 to 2 3/8. And so they think it's good to make a tenon 2 3/8. That's a bigger tenon, that'll be stronger. Well, not the case now. It's biting in all the wrong places. But if you keep going beyond that, you can actually get a jaw to come out by accident or a section of it, and that prevents that. And I think on some chucks on the other side, this slot might be shorter on one side and longer on another side to prevent that. In the Vic marks, the pin comes out of the body, and there's a hole in the back where you can drive it down to get the jaw out, and you go around the other side and you drive it back up to make it be safety again. Thank you, Craig. The other screw that One Way has, I don't know if anybody else has one. In their spindle adapter, these are these inside of here are tapered. And this screw is intended to go in and lock on to your lathe spindle. So if you're going to turn in reverse, and I do quite often, for many things it's much easier, then I'll use this brand. I have 3 one-ways, and they each have these lock screws in them. The downside, depending on your lathe, sometimes these are positioned in the threads, so they barf up the threads because you don't have a big enough thick plate on the backside. But nevertheless, they'll keep, when you turn in reverse, if you get a catch, this will tend to unscrew. As opposed to when you're turning forward, it just gets tighter. So that's why you want to lock this onto the spindle shaft if you've got your lathe in reverse. Yeah. 10 years and he can't forget. That was a faceplate. That was a faceplate. He bought a brand new Powermatic 20-inch lathe, and it came with a faceplate on the spindle. And Dave Urian and I were helping him. And you think we could get that thing off? We beat on it, we pounded on it, and then we looked and saw some set screws, so we loosened them up. So, yeah, we all have our little problems. So at any rate, what's a lot of people don't remember, or they don't read their manuals, and not that that would be any of you guys. So, and again, I don't think you can see this in here. Got to turn it up to go down and down to go up. There's a total of 2, 4, 5 holes around here. 3 of them are used. You put this tapered adapter in, and then you put the 3 screws, just set them in there, and then you do just like taking tire lugs off a car. You go ahead and start screwing this one in, a couple of turns, next one a couple of turns, this one a couple of turns. Then you might want to go backwards a couple of turns, couple of turns, couple of turns. And they're pretty long screws, you got to go a while. And finally you'll get down to, they'll start to be snug, and then you can go around and just tighten each one of them up. So how do you get this big tapered thing that's been wedged down in there out? You take the 3 screws out, and you can't get it out, period. So you take 2 of those screws, and you put them in the other 2 holes that are there, and those holes are threaded, and they go down, and they push against the plate this is mounted to, and you half turn at a time, back and forth, and it actually jacks that spindle adapter back out. Normally you only have to do that once in your life, because you're going to go from your 1x8 mini lathe to a real lathe, and it's going to be, you're going to have to change the spindle adapter, and then you're done. You don't ever usually have to ever do that again.